Yeah, good morning. Namaste, Vanakkam.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, so how was yesterday? What did you guys do?
The classes and
Full of classes.
yes,
Don't tell me you had classes later in the evening and in the night. What do you do nowadays? I'm curious. What do you do nowadays with this? Whatever the state of lockdowns are, what is it that you guys do? I'm just curious to know.
Working in the farm.
Pardon?
Working in the farm, sir.
Oh, very nice. That's very nice. Any other answers? How many of you actually move out regularly, almost on a daily basis? Anybody? In your off class time, when you're not in class, later in the evening, do you really go out somewhere?
sir, I go out for a run. Yeah,
Pardon?
sir, I go out for a run.
Run. Oh,
Yeah.
that's very nice. That's very good. What's the distance you run?
Uh,
Routinely?
sir, I try to make 6,000 steps daily.
Okay. That's very good. It's better to take care of your health at a young age,
Yes,
See,
sir.
one of the very important things in our lives is to observe that our body actually has a very intriguing phenomenon called feed forward. We've all studied feedback. Very important to study feed forward, because what you do at a young age looks like it has implications for the state of your health later on in your life.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and this is observable, and I believe verifiable also. And it will be a very interesting part of scientific experiments and the working of science, the application of science to study feed forward phenomena. How does a signal go from now to a time in the future and affect the same system that you're talking about? I'm not sure whether there's much literature on that. I don't know. It's better to confess that I'm ignorant. But it looks like it's an intriguing phenomenon. Maybe one of these days I'll start looking at that. But that's a good practice, taking care of your own personal health. At least in my college days, I used to play a lot of sports, and that has helped me in some sense. Now, I'm not a great sportsman, but at least I kept myself physically active. Yeah. Anybody else? And then we'll move on. Any other different practice? Because that was a good answer. I work in the fields, I run. Any other different answer?
Reading novel.
Okay. Reading. You're interested in, novels means obviously fiction, right? Okay. Any particular authors you're interested in?
Sir, right now I'm reading Amis, the Shiva trilogy, so that's really
Pardon?
interesting.
Ariman, your voice is coming through a little muddled. That's a problem of technology. If you speak a bit slowly, it will help. So, who are the authors, please?
Sir, Amis.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Okay, we'll continue from where we left off. So, today I've requested our friends here in the studio to post the board of yesterday. There's no point in writing again and again. So, don't take it as a PowerPoint slide. I think you should take it as the board that we wrote yesterday. Okay. So, today I'm not going to revise because we will continue. Yesterday I had a discussion about the mission, and I shared with you that mission statements have 4 components. And the duty, the right, the authority, the responsibility, and even tradition and convention are vested in the top leadership of the organization, correct? Because they are the founders in some sense, and they are the leaders, the visionary leaders and the leaders. So they have to formulate the mission statement. And we have already discussed that it is a legal requirement for registered organizations in our country. And what are these 4 components that we talked of? The first one was basic activities. We discussed the example of IIT Madras or any other national institute or other institute. The basic activities are education, which is teaching, learning, evaluation, certification. And then the manner of performance of the basic activities, which is the flavor with which the basic activities are performed. I mean, I'm using the word flavor to sort of convey a mental model to you. And the third is the stakeholders. And as I mentioned, the stakeholders lie across the entire supply chain and value chain, upstream and downstream, even for an educational institution. And then the expected outcomes. I had also mentioned that the first 2, which is basic activities and the manner of performance, are mandatory in a mission. And there are reasons for that, because they form part of the inspiring force in the statement. The statement has some force. We expect people who work in the organizations to be inspired by that mission. People should say, wow, I like this set of duties and I'm aligned. I used a new word, aligned. Okay? That's very important for us in the field of management. Alignment of people and their minds, their thoughts, their intentions, their actions. Alignment becomes very critical for the organization to flourish. There are other issues. We will talk about that. For example, there are regulations, there is competition, there's the uncertainty of the market and the customers and the downstream supply chain, upstream supply chain. We ordinarily expect that we say ceteris paribus, Now, ceteris paribus means, you can look up this term, CETERIS, ceteris paribus, PARIBUS. It means all else remaining the same. Those of you who study economics particularly will come across this term fairly commonly. That means all else remaining the same, what happens to some entity or its relationship with another entity and so on. Okay? So, ceteris, all else remaining the same, when alignment is there in an organization, you expect the organization to flourish. Okay? And by now, you would have quickly gathered intelligently that the mission statement is a force for alignment, because it sort of states the duties and gives out the manner of performance of the flavor, which can attract employees. Potentially, it can attract employees, assuming that everybody is very conscientious, and very diligent in choosing their careers. So they look at the mission statement of the company and say, yeah, I like this. I would like to work in this company. So the first 2 components are mandatory, compulsory. The next 2 are optional. They may be there, they may not be there in a mission statement. Okay. And what we have shared is how do you dissect a mission statement when you come across one. And I hope you are also helped whenever you work in an organization without an explicit mission statement. Our discussions can serve as a reference point for you to formulate or to help formulate the mission statement of that organization in which you work. Shall I move on? Are you clear about the mission statement?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So today we will discuss about the vision statement. Okay. What is the vision statement? I have already mentioned to you a couple of classes ago, or a couple of meetings ago. I'll call our discussions as discussion meetings. It's all right. You can use the word class also. It's a more traditional term. The vision statement is a statement of future reality. That means that statement does not reflect current reality. Okay, we are not talking about now, here and now. We are talking about the future, sometime in the future. And very importantly, the long-term future. Ordinarily, nobody says, this is my vision for next week. Ordinarily, you don't say that. It may not be Literally, it may not be wrong, but in terms of meaning, it doesn't convey much. I mean, you always like to use the word visualize or vision in the context of the long term. So typically for companies or institutions, a vision may be stated, say, 3 years ahead, 5 years ahead. And as I mentioned earlier, if you're talking of 10 to 15 years ahead, ordinarily people use the term perspective. You may recall our discussions when I shared with you that when you're dealing with 10 to 15 years into the future, we use scenarios. Whereas in the case of a vision, 3 to 5 years, you may not use scenarios. I'm not saying you must not. I know companies and organizations that do that do work on scenarios and simulation, etc. That's fine. Ordinarily, it's not done, okay, because our belief is 3 to 5 years is reasonably within our controls. Our actions are within our controls. Our feel of uncertainty is not completely off the line, or off the track. So we feel more confident, relatively speaking, when we talk of 3 to 5 years ahead, rather than 10 to 15 years ahead, which is really the distant future. I believe one of the economists said, in the long run, we are dead. Well, that's a correct statement. As human beings, we are all born, so we will die someday. But as the human species, we must not die. So the statement in that sense, if it refers to the human species, it must not die. If it refers to the human spirit, well, I guess it will not die. Okay? So you have to look at it from those levels. But vision and perspective, I hope you're clear about these concepts. Perspective, very long term, 10 to 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, sometimes, very rarely, next century also. And then vision, ordinarily 3 to 5 years. But there are two types of vision statements. And this is something that everyone has to note. The first type of vision statement is called the eventual vision statement. Okay, eventually, someday, which means you're really not bringing you're not bringing in time into the discussion, but still notionally you're keeping 3 to 5 years in your mind. But really you're saying someday in the future. So it's sort of the eventual vision is sort of aligned more to the concept of a perspective, right? And the second type of vision statement is what you may call the timed vision statement, where you state 3 years later, our institution will be like this, will be seen to be like this. Today it is not, but we will put in planned effort and make the institution, transform the institution into that reality 3 years later or 5 years later. Okay? So we have the eventual vision and the timed vision. Very often, most commonly, you will come across eventual vision statements. Someday. Okay? There's a reason for that. It sort of provides a safety net, because people don't like to lose or to fail. Because if you say 3 years later, our organization will be this, and you are the leader, then you sort of exposing your accountability. It may not happen. I'm not saying it will not happen. That's a wrong statement. Maybe you may even achieve what you have stated, or in fact, you may even exceed what you have stated. That's also possible. But there is that chance that you may not achieve what you have stated in the long run. That is 3 to 5 years. So then people may ask, or behind your back people will talk, this guy said he will do this. What did he do? Nothing, So people who are antagonistic might make those kind of statements. See, incidentally, every organization, every institution has politics. Someday later in the course, I'll talk about that also, because that's a part and parcel of your work as a maintenance manager. I hope all of you are able to see this point. It's not that organizations work clean with clean relationships. There is politics in organizations, every organization, you know. So you have to understand that, but we'll talk about that much later in the course. Okay. But the point I'm making is people do talk. So you make a time division or you formulate a time division and state it explicitly, clearly, concisely, cogently. Let's put it that way. Okay. Now, it's possible that the person who stated the vision may fail 3 years later, 5 years later. So people will talk. So ordinarily, we don't like to be in that kind of a situation. So the tendency to stick to an eventual vision is very strong. And people hold back if they have to formulate a time division. But I always advocate it is very good to have a timed vision. Let me put it this way, at least confidentially within a small team, there's nothing wrong in having a timed vision while portraying the eventual vision of the organization. I hope this is clear. A timed vision also serves as a long term in a milestone manner. It's sort of milestone in the long run, in the journey of the organization or the institution. This is clear. I hope this part is clear.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. There's another feature which we have to consider when we talk about the vision statement. A vision, as you have seen now through our discussions, is time dependent. If you are going to state a timed vision, a vision is time dependent. In a similar manner, a vision is also leader dependent. Can anyone quickly reason as to why a vision is leader dependent? Does something strike you? Why should a vision statement depend on who the leader is? Yeah?
Sir,
Yeah, who's coming in, please?
Sir Akhilesh.
Akhilesh, yeah. Please, Akhilesh. Yeah.
Sir, if we take two countries example,
Yeah.
in Russia, everything is government hand,
Okay.
and in America, everything is in private hands.
Markets.
In-
Okay.
In both the economies,
Ah. Yeah.
when we talk about Russian Federation, we take into consideration to people welfare,
Okay.
socio-economic balance.
Okay.
But in American society,
Hmm.
we think about the growth of the country as well.
Okay. Okay. Let's accept that. Okay. Go ahead. So, why is it leader dependent in an organization or an institution? You have the answer. I know that you guys know the answer. You just have to engage in that little thought process. Akhilesh, your answer is correct, but it's at a general level. I would have liked to have a very specific answer. Anybody? Always try to attempt an answer. That's something I would urge you to consider. Let me ask a question to help you. Do you agree that a leader of an organization or an institution holds the right to state the vision statement, whether it's eventual or timed? Do you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Correct. Now,
Yes,
what
sir.
happens when that leader retires? A new leader will come in. Now, will you apply the same principle or not? That the leader will hold the right to state his or her vision.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So naturally, the vision is leader dependent. When one leader retires and moves out, the new leader will hold the right to state the vision. which is natural. And you will also notice that even in our country, how companies have transformed themselves. Organizations have completely transformed themselves. Let's go back about 40 years. Would anybody have imagined that the Indian Railways would have played a very strong and direct, explicit role in tourism the way it's doing now? Today you have IRCTC. Look at the kind of programs they are offering, tourism programs they are offering. They're trying to attract tourists. They're using their resources to help people move about the country, to gain new experiences, socio-cultural and other experiences as they move around. So it's a wonderful change and transformation that has happened. I mentioned to you, would anybody have imagined 40 years ago that the railways might emerge among the largest providers of fiber optic communication, fiber optic cable communications? I believe they laid all the cables along the tracks. And you know, the Indian Railways network is very large. So you see somewhere the vision and mission have also changed across a long period of time. Did anybody think about, say, 30 years ago that the Reliance Group will be selling vegetables? I'm sure you agree. At that time, it was into primarily fabrics and the oil and that kind of stuff. But today they are into almost every conceivable business, including telecom. Oh, Jio, right? So you have all sorts of things happening in companies. So the company changes, and you have an example where the leader himself is transforming the vision within that time. Maybe a visionary leader. Correct? So these are very interesting things. And don't forget the earlier concept I shared with you. The mission and the vision are like two eyes of an organization. It's like our two eyes. Please let us not ask a stupid question as to which is more important and which drives what. In my opinion, it's quite a stupid question. You need both. And there is a dynamic connecting the two. In some sense, the vision drives the mission. In another sense, the mission sort of encompasses the vision. I don't know whether the word encompasses is perfect, but I feel for now it seems all right. You know? The mission, in some sense, helps articulate the vision. So you need both. And now comes an important point. Organizations and institutions pursue their mission. I did mention this. You don't say, I accomplish my mission. This is not the same meaning as in the military or in space activities. You know, you say mission accomplished. You want to put a special satellite out in a particular position in space, and we do it correctly. We say mission accomplished. Mangalyaan, mission accomplished. Okay. Chandrayaan-1, mission accomplished. In the organizational context and institutional context, there is a subtle shift of meaning, because a mission reflects your duties, not some accomplishment. The dharma. So you are duty bound to uphold your dharma. So you're duty bound to perform your duties. So you just say, I keep performing my duties, and that's my core duty. So you pursue a mission, and you realize a vision. A vision is realized, brought to reality. Now comes a slight trick. But what about an eventual vision? Can you realize it? Yeah, you can experience the realization of that vision. Maybe you will have some surrogate variables or indicators to inform you that you have realized that vision. But you will still continue with that process, because it's an eventual vision. It should hold good for a very, very long time. Okay? So, this is very important, and I would urge you to examine 2 or 3 mission and vision statements of organizations and educational institutions, including IIT Madras. I'm sure you'll get some nice insights when you directly expose yourself to those mission and vision statements. I hope you're clear about the mission and vision statements, right? Can we move on?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Now, mission and vision statements, they're philosophical. Remember what we had discussed earlier? The top level or the strategic level or the leadership level of an organization is concerned with philosophy, purpose, principles, and perspectives. I've also told you the term principles is sometimes interpreted as values, core values, guiding principles. Okay. Now, because it is philosophical and you want to realize the vision and perform your duties, we have to come to action. After all, intention has to be transformed into action. In this case, the intention, we can say, is positive desire. So when you want to fulfill your desire, you have to engage in action. And action takes place at the ground level. I hope all of us agree. Action involves expenditure of energy, Shakti. And that takes place at the ground level, the work level. It may be a bank, it may be a cement manufacturing plant, it may be a textiles producing plant, or it may be an auto components factory. The work has to happen on the shop floor or equivalent of the shop floor. Or it may be an educational institution. Right now, which level are we in right now? Yeah, come on. There are 3 levels, top, mid, and work. Which level are we experiencing and engaged in right now?
Work level, sir.
Work level.
Correct. Absolutely
level,
correct.
sir.
We are all engaged in the work level, and do not forget, please try to have a big pattern in your minds. We are engaged in the work level, and we are now a part and parcel of the value addition process that IIT Madras shall engage in. And where is this value addition? It is in terms of your learning through additional knowledge. Or sometimes it may not be additional knowledge, it may be modified or articulated knowledge. You are enabled to take a new perspective of the same knowledge. Even that's fine. There's a value addition in that. Incidentally, I have not gone deep into the subject of value, which itself is a very important subject because it is at the core of our lives. Value is at the core. It's one of the foundation pillars of our lives, our work, our experiences at home, everywhere. Okay? And here, I would like you to understand something. There are 4 contexts of human life. And I'm going to get back to this top level, work level very soon. But I want you to understand this concept. There are 4 contexts of human life. The first context is me alone. I am alone with myself, my thoughts, my bodily experience, my metabolism, etc. I'm not with anybody. I may have gone into the Himalayas, I may have gone into the beach with nobody around, I may be in a forest alone. But anyway, it's a very interesting thing. I hope you recognize you can be alone anywhere. Second context, me at home. I am at my home, and here I'm sort of removing alone temporarily for now. I am with my family, my parents, my uncles, aunts, my children, my grandparents, perhaps even my neighbors or my friends. I'm at home. I'm relating. Okay, I'm conversing. I'm relating. The third context is me at work. I am in my work situation. I am with my peers, my colleagues, my superiors, my subordinates, my supply chain partners, or anybody else officially coming in to relate to me in the context of my work. So what are the three? Me alone, me at home, me at work. The fourth one is interesting. Remember, we are discussing about 4 contexts of life, and these are very important in the subject of management. And I'm not sure whether you will find what I am discussing with you in some textbook. May be there, may not be there. I am ignorant. I don't know. The fourth context is me in public. That means I'm there in public. I'm in a mall, or I'm at the beach where there are hundreds of people, or I'm somewhere else, some tourist spot, okay, or I'm just walking on the street, or I'm in the metro, or I'm in an airport, but I'm in public. Now, what is interesting is when we are in public, okay, technically you're not alone, and the beauty is, technically, you're not alone, and the beauty is, you don't even know who's watching you. Perhaps you may be watched. Somebody is watching you. You don't know that. Why is this important? Because after all, this is where the subject of etiquette, ethics, and public civic sense, all these things come in. See, very often I've come across this situation, even in our own institutions, you know. So people may buy some chocolate or something, and they'll take the wrapper, have the chocolate, and almost involuntarily, you know, they'll just throw the wrapper. Now, it's not that the person is deliberately doing it. I'm very confident. A person may not be deliberately doing it. It just comes as a habit, you know. That throwing the wrapper is sort of conditioned. I mean, the person is conditioned. Now the question is, has the person violated civic sense? The answer is yes. You can't say no. Because the person is dirtying. Of course, we are all into a big Swachhata mission now, which is good. Country, obviously, one of the first things anybody will notice in a country visually is the cleanliness and hygiene and aesthetics and beauty and order, and even order in disorder and so on, order in chaos, etc. You know, there is a beauty in that. Okay, so public, you're being watched. Now, in these 4 contexts, your behavior matters. Me alone. To what extent is your being with yourself strengthening you as a person? As somebody said, I could be alone and I could be running in public. I hope you got this trick. You can be alone in the other 3 contexts. You can be at home, you can be alone simultaneously. There's an intersection. You can be at work and you can still be alone. You can be in public with hundreds of people and still be alone. Okay? Because loneliness is a state of mind. Now, these 4 contexts become important when we talk about work and performance of duty. Because even at work, you're watched. At home, you're watched. The difference is, at home and at work, you're, for most part of the time, you're watched by people with whom you relate, who know you know them, at least as colleagues or as relatives and friends. You know each other. So there's a certain okay with your being watched. you're sort of in greater control. In public, as I mentioned, you're watched by people whom you don't know. They don't know you, but you're watched. Okay? So in the performance of duties, this becomes very important. So when I want to transform philosophy into work, action, under these contexts, and I hope you are able to see the logic why I discussed the 4 contexts. Let me pose a question. Do you agree when you are working ordinarily, even now as a student, right now, when you are in this lecture, do you agree in your mind, thoughts of your home and something else are streaming through? Do you agree?
Yes, sir.
This is
Yes,
normal
sir.
for all of us. I may be talking to you, and maybe because of my experience as a teacher, the words may be flowing. But there is no guarantee that I'm not thinking of my grandchildren right now. See, to a limited extent, we do parallel processing, to a very limited extent. Okay? So, my words may be flowing out normally. So, I'm trying to do heavy multitasking and parallel processing in my brain. I'm thinking of my grandchildren, I may be thinking of a friend, and so on, but momentarily. Okay? So, but that affects the quality of the work that I'm doing. If I'm going to, as a teacher, if my mind is dominated by other thoughts in class, you guys will see it. You will observe. And you might even talk, what's happening to LSG? This guy's, something is wrong today. Okay? Now, this is a very important point. So, the whole thing builds up together to create the functioning of the organization. Please imagine, there are several workers, there are several people working in the organization. Right now, there may be many lectures happening in IIT Madras. Right now. We don't know that what's happening elsewhere, they don't know what's happening here. But all this combines to make IIT Madras, and today, all this combines to contribute to that small epsilon bit of your learning experiences. Like you, there are students sitting elsewhere and taking an online class. Now, these small drops make the ocean of IIT Madras. And in the long run, I stated this so that you see the nice connection between your actions on the ground and the realization of a vision while pursuing your mission. That connection is very important. That's why very often when we are small, usually our grandparents tell us that story, you know. I mean, what is called Rama's bridge to Lanka before he went to war with Ravana. You know, there is that nice anecdote, how a squirrel was helping lay that bridge, you know, collecting sand and depositing it on the bridge. So we are like those squirrels. That bridge is, I mean, I'm using a metaphor, that bridge is the cause of education, or perhaps the institution, IIT Madras. So we are contributing to the development and growth and strengthening of IIT Madras. We're all those squirrels. The students are also there. You play a role. Your dharma is to learn. And when you learn effectively and efficiently, you are contributing to the strengthening of the institution to that extent. So you cannot underplay your role. Don't think that what you're doing is insignificant or unimportant. It is very important and significant because then the collective works. Now I'll connect you to the term alignment which I used. What do you think will be the result when people are aligned in terms of their intentions, their logic, their expressions, and their actions? Can you sort of imagine and describe what will be the net result when there is great alignment? Yeah,
Growth will happen.
growth is one answer. Anything else?
The vision of that person will start to take form.
Pardon? I didn't get that.
The vision of that person will
Yeah.
start to take form.
Yeah, okay. It's a fair thing. Anything else? See, there are two things we are talking of here.
Inspires more.
Yeah, sure, please, Arvind.
Sir, if the vision is aligned among all the employees, then more initiatives are inspired amongst them.
That's very good.
Employees.
So let me talk about, let me suggest something. Do you agree in this whole process of alignment, there are two things, the individual and the collective, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, the alignment happens because individuals are bonded together, are related in a synchronous way. Okay? In fact, I'll use a strong technical term all of us would have learned in our engineering. They're resonating. Do you agree? When alignment is perfect, there'll be some sort of resonance in the output that's coming out from those individuals who are relating to each other. Do you agree with that idea?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now, we all know, I mean, we study resonance and we sometimes study resonance in the context of failure of some part or some component. But resonance also has a positive effect, you know. Now, this is what we call as a state of synergy in our organizations. SYNERGY. And I would like you to appreciate that it is the duty, in fact, it is the prime duty of any leader worth his or her salt to attempt continually to realize synergy in his or her organization. This is a very important lesson. Any leader at any level in the organization. Please understand, even as you come down to the mid-level, at the mid-level there are leaders. But for that level, I hope you understand the difference between the organizational leader and the functional leader. They are not the same. Okay? Are you able to appreciate the difference between the leader of an organization and the leader of a function?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. For example, the CEO is a leader of the organization. You can even say a CXO is the leader of an organization and a set of functions. Fine. But where would you put a production manager or a maintenance manager? Well, they're not leader of the organization, but they're leading a function. Correct? So, any leader must hold as his or her prime aim, a most important aim, to realize synergy in their context. Now you can understand. You must realize synergy in you as an individual person. Your body and mind should be synergized. Now you know, one of our friends said he runs in the evenings. It is a process. It is his action to contribute to his health and synergy within himself. Remember, synergy is a wonderful experience. And you experience it. Okay? You actually experience it. Now, let me give you a parallel. Do you agree that there are days when you feel like you can move mountains? Yes or no? Or at least some moments when you feel, I can do this. I can. Don't you get that feeling?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now, do you agree you feel very good about yourself in those times? I'm not saying that feeling is sustained, but there are moments in our lives when we get that feeling. Not only that, I want you to recognize collectively we can get that feeling, collectively sometimes. And that kind of synergy is very important in organizations. So as a functional leader, can you do something to create that kind of a feeling in your colleagues who are working with you? Synergized workforce. And remember, a synergized workforce is automatically an aligned workforce. Alignment is a precondition for synergy to happen. I think you can understand the logic. So the question is, as a leader, what should I do to create that alignment so that synergy can follow? And don't forget, it's an important lesson, it's very difficult to sustain synergy. Very difficult. It's because it's so wonderful, it's so beautiful. If anybody can sustain synergy, it will lose its value. I think, one of the logics that we use is, if anything is very valuable, it's valuable because it's rare, often. It's not very easy. If you can attain something very easily, the value goes down. It's almost like there seems to be decreased value for human life in the world around us. Maybe there are so many human beings that the value of a human being has come down. Sometimes I start suspecting, and I hope I'm terribly wrong in that suspicion. But it looks like that. Okay? So, the philosophy of the organization reflected in the mission and vision provide a first force for alignment. That has to be transformed into action on the ground. And synergy happens because of action on the ground. So it's a philosophy coupling into action and driving action. So in this sense, you can understand that a mission guides, provides guidance because it states duties. A vision propels. Okay? The vision provides the motive force. And these are, not that the mission doesn't have motive force or the vision doesn't guide. Please do not go to an extreme. I'm talking of a dominance basically here. Okay? A mission, because of the principles it holds inside the actions, it provides the guidance. Please do this, do it this way. Manner of performance, basic activities. A vision propels. I have to be there eventually or in a time. So it sort of propels you, provides the motive force, powers you. That has to be transformed into action on the ground, work level. Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
At the work level, what were the outcomes we talked about? At the leadership level or strategic level or top level, mission and vision. Go back to your diagrams. At the work level, how do we articulate our outcomes of planned effort from start time to end time?
Objectives and goals.
Goals.
No, at the work level research.
Goals.
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 Correct.
Goals.
Very correct. Goals. We'll talk about this. But when I want to translate a philosophy into work level, I need a bridge, which is the mid-level. That bridge is the mid-level. Okay? And that bridge corresponds to the outcome of objectives. So I'm coming to answer one of the questions asked by a friend a couple of classes earlier. What's the difference between objectives and goals? Okay? We're going to discuss that. I'll begin the discussion. So objectives serve as the bridge to the work. Now this mid-level corresponds to policies, plans, programs, and projects. You can write that down. Later I will write it maybe tomorrow or something like that. But I want you to understand. Top level, philosophy, purpose, principles, perspectives. Mid-level, policies, plans, programs, and projects. All of you know project management is a big subject today. Planning is a big subject. Policy formulation is a very big subject. Okay? And of course, program management and project management are interrelated. One is a little larger in scope. Now, the mid-level consists of two kinds of employees, managers and executives. Just like you had visionary leaders and leaders at the top level or strategic level or leadership level, at the mid-level, you'll have managers and executives. It's the tactical level or what you call the managerial level. So the leadership level is connected with the managerial level. So you have managers and executives. And their concern is with policies, plans, programs, and projects. That's their outcome. That's their work outcome. Objectives of the organization. And for today, I will close by stating that objectives indicate the direction of effort that will be put in the organization. What is the direction of effort while utilizing the resources of the organization? That is what objectives state. So objectives by definition, in this definition that I've shared with you, are not measurable, but they can be indicated. The fulfillment level of an objective can be indicated. Sometimes, as I said, experienced. We'll return to this when we meet again on Monday. Thank you very much.